What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, legendary, former undisputed heavyweight world champion, Iron Mike Tyson, ahead of his highly anticipated legendary showdown with former four-division world champion, former pound-for-pound king, legendary iconic boxer, Roy Jones Jr., that is set to take place tonight. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of interviews, a lot of cameras in each one of their faces, and they're going to ask them how the fight is going to play out. Zab Judah, former multi-division world champion, former undisputed welterweight world champion, Zab Super Judah, superstar boxer. He asked Mike Tyson, how do you feel about the only having 2-minute criteria opposed to being used to having a normal 3 minutes to fight each round, right? This is this is a 2-minute, eight round fight. So normally, Mike Tyson is used to fighting 12 3-minute rounds. Now tonight, he's going to fight 8 2-minute rounds, which is the limit for women's boxing. Women's boxing, they fight 2-minute rounds. So Mike Tyson, when asked about this by Zab Judah, who is a fellow Brooklyn and Brownsville native, so Zab Judah asked him, he said, what do you think about only having 2 minutes? Mike Tyson responded. He said, well, I plan to get rid of him in under 2 minutes. He says, it doesn't matter. What do I need the extra minute for? He says, you go back and look at the history of me and my knockouts. Most of them were under 2 minutes anyway. So I don't need that extra minute. I plan to get Roy Jones out of there in under 2 minutes anyway. Wow. Mike Tyson is known for his ferociousness, his power, his combinations, his quickness. Obviously, Mike Tyson is 54 years of age, but Roy Jones is 51 years of age. Roy Jones has only campaigned at the heavyweight division one time in his career when he fought Ruiz, and he made history, right? With that said, Roy Jones is not a career heavyweight. He is a light heavyweight, super middleweight, the majority of his career. He didn't even fight at cruiserweight, at 200 pounds, okay? Roy Jones, when he made heavyweight, he just made it. He came in at like 201, 202, just enough to be considered a heavyweight. So Roy Jones is not a career heavyweight. He has the reach advantage over Mike Tyson. He has a slight height advantage. He's 5'11". Mike Tyson is 5'10" and a half. So he has a slight advantage in that aspect. But Roy Jones relied solely on his athletic ability and his reflexes the majority of his career. And when you saw a dip in his reflexes and his athletic ability, Roy Jones started to get knocked out. Now, Mike Tyson was up against much, much bigger guys throughout his career. Mike Tyson, for a heavyweight, only being 5'10" and a half, is not a big heavyweight. Most of the heavyweights, even you look at when he fought Evander Holyfield, who was undisputed at cruiserweight, 200 pounds, Evander Holyfield is still 6'2", and he came in about the same weight as Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson usually comes in about 218 to 220 pounds. That's being generous. And Evander Holyfield as well. So even when Evander Holyfield made his way to heavyweight, Evander Holyfield was still a bigger guy than Mike Tyson. Evander Holyfield, 6'2". He came in about 225. Okay, so he still was a bigger guy than Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson just had, this legendary neck size, and his ferociousness and his uncanny quickness, right? He was very, very quick with it, mainly his head movement, the dipping, coming underneath with the combination, boom, 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 boom. So Mike Tyson's listed at 5'10" with a 71-inch arm reach. So Floyd Mayweather and Terrence Crawford have longer arms than Mike Tyson. And Mike Tyson campaigned in the heavyweight division, okay, at 5'10". Even in his last fight, when he lost a knockout loss to Kevin McBride was 6'6" with an 80-inch arm reach. So he had a 9-inch arm reach advantage. and a 7-inch height advantage over Mike Tyson. Okay, and he got stopped by Kevin McBride. Okay, so that just goes to show what Mike Tyson was up against in his career. Right, he's always been in a disadvantage. In this fight, he's not going to be at a disadvantage. Okay, he fought Danny Williams, right? And Danny Williams was 6'3" with a 79-inch arm reach. So he had an 8-inch arm reach advantage and a 5-inch height advantage over Mike Tyson. So on a consistent basis, Mike Tyson was at a disadvantage. Okay, this is no excuse for his losing. He beat Clifford Etienne, right? That was the last victory he had. But even Clifford Etienne was 6'2" with a 74-inch arm reach. So he had a 4-inch height advantage and a 3-inch arm reach advantage over Mike Tyson. So Mike Tyson has always been up against it. Mike Tyson's lifestyle outside of the ring cost him a lot of his success within the sport of boxing. Now, don't get me wrong. He was the youngest heavyweight world champion. He created history, knockout guys in first minute. It was a lasting joke that if you didn't have your food and stuff by the time Mike Tyson got to the ring, don't blink because the fight could be over. You go to get your food, come back, and the fight is over. Mike Tyson has a history of that. But in this fight with Roy Jones Jr., Mike Tyson is not going to be at a disadvantage as he's used to experiencing when he stepped in the ring with natural heavyweights. That's not going to be the case tonight. And like I said, Roy Jones Jr. relied solely on his reflexes. Roy Jones Jr. relied solely on his athletic ability. And most people were saying that Roy Jones Jr., made a lot of mistakes, but his athletic ability and his reflexes made up for those mistakes. As I stated, Roy Jones, relied solely on his athletic ability. He was probably the greatest athlete the sport of boxing has ever seen in the history of the sport of boxing. He just could get away with so many things that you just would not teach. Okay, so many unorthodox things, right? He was an entertainer, putting his hands behind his back, both hands, and could knock a guy out with a left hook. That's how great Roy Jones was. That's how great of an athlete Roy Jones was. But his technical skills and his discipline in the ring were not there. It just was his athletic and reflexes ability was so much above everybody else that he was able to get away with it. Thus the reason why he was able to get away with it fighting Ruiz at heavyweight. Okay, so with that said, Roy Jones is 5'11", Mike Tyson is 5'10", so he has a 1-inch height advantage, and he has a 74-inch arm reach. Now, the thing is, Roy Jones doesn't have a sturdy chin. He's been dramatically knocked out in his career. In some fights where people were worrying about Roy Jones. The Glenn Johnson fight, the first Tarver fight. And I'm talking, he was getting knocked out back to back to back, right? Which wasn't good. He got knocked out by Antonio Tarver in 2004. Then in his media fight with Glenn Johnson, he was brutally knocked out in that fight. Then he lost a unanimous decision to Tarver. After that, 3 back-to-back losses. So Roy Jones is just not the same guy. Styles make fights, and they're different type of athletes. Now, Roy Jones is 3 years younger than I am Mike Tyson, but Roy Jones relied on his reflexes. The last thing to go in the sport of boxing is your power. I know, and you can see just the physiques, right? Roy Jones' physique at 51 looks a lot softer than Mike Tyson's physique at 54. Roy Jones' knockouts were far more brutal than Mike Tyson. Now, Mike Tyson did get brutally knocked out by Buster Douglas and Lennox Lewis, right? But, the other knockouts, when he got knocked out by Holyfield, it was more the referee. He had enough. He stumbled back into the ropes. He was knocked out. Yeah, he was. But not in the fashion he was knocked out by Lennox Lewis and by James Buster Douglas. Most of Roy Jones, if not all of Roy Jones' knockouts were brutal. He was knocked out on his feet, standing straight up, and he got hit. He was knocked out. He was gone, and he just fell like a statue. Obviously, against Tarver, got caught with the left hook. Boom. He knocked out Cole. Glenn Johnson brutally knocked him out with his head bounced off the canvas in a nasty way. So Roy Jones, because he relied on his reflexes, and Roy Jones said something in a recent interview. He says, I have to keep him at bay, use my speed that is still I'm still faster than 85% of today's fighters. He says, but I can't get caught with something silly or something I don't see. That's what I'm looking to avoid. And the problem with that is Roy Jones still thinks that he has that athletic ability. So he sees punches that used to graze him and just miss him by a hair. Those punches are now landing. And if he gets hit by the pressure of Mike Tyson will be in his chest, his legs are not the same. He has bad knees, Roy Jones. You saw the video of Roy Jones running up the hill. His knees are bad, right? So he can't even get out the way. His feet are not the same. So to be able to avoid Mike Tyson for 8 rounds in your chest is going to be a real tough task for Roy Jones. And I'm expecting a knockout in his fight on the behalf of Mike Tyson. So let's see how this all plays out. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.